After a completely reasonable 14-month delay, the release of Black Widow is finally right around the corner. The pushback gave us a lot of time to reflect on her character, from humble beginnings to leading a flagship summer blockbuster. This character has a long and bumpy legacy behind her, both within and beyond the MCU. For example, did you know in the comics that she was at one point romantically involved with the Winter Soldier? Or that Lionsgate was actually on track to make a Black Widow movie way back in 2004? We're digging into that and so much more as we take a look at the history of Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff. Created by Don Rico, Don Heck, and of course Stan the Man Lee, Black Widow first appeared in a 1964 issue of Tales of Suspense. Her initial origin story was simply that of a Russian spy equipped with high-tech weaponry who eventually defects to America. Of course, in recent years that's been retconned into a much more elaborate plotline involving the sinister Red Room, but we'll get into that later. Much like her debut in the MCU, Black Widow's first appearance saw her as an antagonist to Iron Man, although her look was a lot different from the black spandex that fans know her for. In her first few outings as a comics femme fatale, she can be seen wearing fancy gowns and veils. Don't get me wrong, it's a sharp look, but it's a little too civilian for costumed superheroics. It is not nearly as striking as what she's best known for wearing. It wasn't until a 1970 issue of The Amazing Spider-Man that Natasha finally donned her iconic long red locks and black catsuit. That's black catsuit, not black cat suit. Is that confusing? Black spandex. Black Widow as a comic book character had a long road to becoming the character we all recognize today. For years, she was on the periphery of the Marvel Universe, making small appearances in other heroes' stories and showing up in less than successful Marvel team-ups. Her first standalone story launched in 1971, however, it only lasted 8 months before being cancelled. Following that short-lived standalone story, Natasha was prominently featured in the ongoing Daredevil book throughout the mid-70s. Black Widow and Daredevil might seem like an unlikely pairing, but the two characters actually share a lot of spicy chemistry on the page. I personally really love their aesthetic together. I think the designs of their suits play off each other really well on the page. I don't know, maybe I just really like the idea of a shiny red and black latex acrobatic act. David Bowie and wife Angela Bowie agreed apparently, because in the 70s the two tried to produce a television series based on the Black Widow and Daredevil comics. They got as far as securing the rights to the Marvel characters and taking photos of actors in costume. Unfortunately, that's as far as production ever got due to budget constraints and the fact that this type of show was basically impossible to make in the 70s. Likewise, Black Widow's relationship with Daredevil didn't last, and she was eventually written out of the Daredevil book. Following the end of her adventures with Matt Murdock, Black Widow was cast as the leader of Marvel's super team, the Champions. What's that? You haven't heard of the Champions? Probably because it's largely considered a failure of a super team book, though it did feature an interesting lineup of characters that included Ghost Rider and Hercules, among others. Creator of the Champions, Tony Isabella, intended for the book to be a scrappy superhero team to represent the lower class. Unfortunately, the book didn't really have a clear direction, and the team disbanded after a short run together. It's hard to imagine now that Black Widow's place in the Marvel Universe was so hard to pin down for a long time. But alas, it took a while for this character to find her groove. After leaving the Champions, once again Black Widow was a free agent. So if you're feeling down about your career trajectory, never forget that it took Black Widow 16 years to find her dream job kicking butt alongside the Earth's mightiest heroes. It wasn't until the 1980s that she started to show up regularly on S.H.I.E.L.D. missions and Avengers stories, which is currently where most of the fans know her from, and the rest is history. Just kidding, this is comics and nothing is straightforward. In recent years, Natasha's origins have had a bit of an overhaul, tying her past to a sinister group of brainwashing super spies. In fact, there have been a bunch of retcons of the Red Room in Black Widow comics, but I'm gonna focus on the most recent one as to avoid getting too into the weeds. Also, this modern origin story is definitely the one that the MCU is pulling from. In it, Natasha is raised from a young age in the Red Room, which belongs to the Russian Black Widow operation. Essentially, the Red Room is a covert facility that turns young girls into deadly assassins. While in the Red Room, Black Widow receives training from the Winter Soldier, and the two even share a bit of a romance. It was a love so strong that Bucky's Winter Soldier programming began to break down, and as a result, the two were forcibly separated. Tragically, their relationship was cut short by the powers that be. If you like this pairing or the sound of this story, I definitely recommend looking into the Bucky-Nat reading order that fans have put together online. I like the idea of this relationship personally, because the two share a lot in common considering the whole Russian brainwashed assassin thing. That's something that would be pretty cool to see in the upcoming movie, although I'm not sure how they could pull it off, since Natasha doesn't seem to have much of a past with Bucky in the MCU. I'm sure they could explain it away with some brainwash hand-waving, as in the comic storyline storyline, all of the Black Widows from the spy program share false memories. In fact, it's the knowledge of these false memories, and a budding romance with Hawkeye, that convinces Natasha to defect from the program in the comics. Like a lot of Marvel characters from recent years, Black Widow didn't become an A-lister until her debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Although her initial debut in Iron Man 2 was an instant hit with audiences, there were multiple hiccups for her character's on-screen appearance behind the scenes. The history of the cinematic Black Widow goes all the way back to 2004, when Lionsgate acquired the film rights to make a Black Widow movie. David Hayter, screenwriter for Fox's first two X-Men movies and Zack Snyder's Watchmen, was attached to pen the script with Avi Arad producing. According to Hayter, the movie would have used the backdrop of the splintered Soviet Empire, a lawless insane asylum with 400 some odd nuclear missile silos. Rebecca Romijn, who was fresh off of portraying Mystique in X-Men and X2, was expected to star. Who knows what could have been? Unfortunately, Lionsgate's Black Widow movie was canned before production got beyond the writing stage, because, get this, too many movies about badass women had recently come out. Oh boy. The movies referenced, according to Hayter, were Tomb Raider, Kill Bill, and Aeon Flux. So not actually that many, but apparently one more femme fatale movie would have been way too much, despite the fact that 90% of action movies star identical male leads. It's pretty hilarious that for a moment the studios were like, yeah, let's get more badass women on the big screen. But after 3 movies in a row, they were like, okay ladies, rein it in, Tom Cruise needs another action lead. On the bright side, had this movie been released, the MCU would be in a completely different shape than it is right now. Scarlett Johansson might have never gotten her career-defining franchise role. Johansson was hellbent on getting cast as Black Widow for Iron Man 2, showing up to casting having already dyed her hair red. But before she got the role, Marvel was already in talks with Emily Blunt to play the part. As you already know, that obviously didn't work out, and Scarlett Johansson signed onto a multi-picture contract to play Black Widow. Since then, she's appeared in 7 MCU movies, however, none that centered around her specifically. I'll be honest, I've gotten the impression that Marvel might have not known exactly what to do with her character, as they didn't expect her to become the fan favorite that she is now. Kevin Feige has expressed interest in producing a Black Widow standalone feature since 2010, after the character's positive reception in Iron Man 2. Throughout the decade, Feige and others have repeatedly hinted at standalone movies for the character. And yet, the Marvel machine marched on for another 10 years of movies before Black Widow was finally ready to release. It's not that the franchise was lacking in Black Widow appearances though, as her origin was hinted at in Age of Ultron, and she played a pivotal role in defeating Thanos in Avengers Endgame. Nonetheless, Black Widow releases after an undeniably climactic moment for her character, which begs the question, is this the last we'll see of Natasha Romanoff? It might very well be, but anything is possible in superhero stories, and no one's ever really gone. It's almost certainly not the last we'll see of Black Widow, as Natasha isn't the only defector from the Black Widow operation. Florence Pugh stars in the movie as Yelena Belova, who in the comics is the second person to carry the Black Widow moniker. Early reception indicates that Florence Pugh is a standout for this movie, so it's unlikely that this is the last we'll be seeing of her. Who am I kidding? This is the MCU. Of course we'll be seeing Florence Pugh pop up as Black Widow again. Will she join the Avengers to take Natasha's place, or perhaps spin off into her own series of Black Widow films, operating in the shadows on the espionage missions she was trained to do? A dedicated spy series would certainly be a fresh direction for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What's next for Black Widow after the release of this movie? Let us know your thoughts down below.